overall, this is a much better advancement on what we've had in the past from the likes of Lima. Hi there, welcome along to another video. I'm Jennifer Kirk and it's really good to have you along, and today we're going to be doing another box opening and review, and this particular item comes thanks to long-term channel friend Derry, and you may have seen him in some earlier episodes, but he managed to find a locomotive that I've been looking for so long. So without further ado, let's take a look. Well, I mentioned to Derry quite some time ago now that one of the locomotives that I really wanted and hadn't yet managed to get hold of was a Class 52. And there's something about these machines that just really appealed to me, and you probably know how this is. There'll be a certain locomotive, it may not even fit the period that you model, but there's just something aesthetically pleasing about it, and you think, I like that, I'm going to have one, who cares, I just like it. And the Class 52 fell into that bracket very much for me, and he sidled up to me at Worley, and he said, I've got you that Class 52 you wanted. I found one second hand, really good condition, and what it shows is if you're prepared to wait, if you're prepared to hunt around, that some of these locomotives are out there at a really favourable price. So it just goes to show it's worth looking, or if you don't have the time to look or anywhere close by, get yourself a Derry. They're really good at rooting these things out. But we've got on there the catalogue number 5208, and this is D1058 Western Nobleman, and I believe this may have been in the Heljan range for a little while. So it's a slightly older model maybe, but it doesn't really matter because it's all up to the same high quality standard of tooling. So I'm going to slip open the box, and Heljan do things a little bit differently. They're very reminiscent of the Dapol O-gauge things, or should I say the Dapol O-gauge things are very reminiscent of the way that Heljan packages their stuff. We've got some detail about the locomotive, build quality, the 5-pole motor, but also quite handily it does show you how to fit some of the extra detailing parts, and these front skirts that this is showing how to fit here, this is essentially just to get a more prototypical feel on the locomotive, but you sacrifice the ability to couple up to things. So most people would probably compromise by fitting this to just one end of the locomotive so that you've still got a coupling on the other end so it can pull a train. Let's see what else we've got. There's a little bit of detail here as well about the history of the class. They were built for the western region of British Rail, and you know, the Western region, Great Western Railway, originally always liked to do their own thing, and when it came to dieselisation, they went their own way with diesel hydraulics rather than the diesel electrics that were turning up for the other regions. And you know, initially they ordered Class 52s, 42s, 43s, 35s, 22s. There's a whole range of these diesel hydraulics, but much higher up the BR management chain, the diesel hydraulic transmissions fell from favour, and the Class 52 Westerns were the longest lasting, but they only got to 1977, although they did have a very popular following, so a number have been preserved. Now we've got interesting exploded diagram of the locomotive, not so much showing where things go, but just, I don't know, maybe it's just trying to show you just how much is in one of these models. It shows you how many of the different pieces go in, so I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of this sheet is, but it's there, so I'm going to show it to you. I'll put that to one side. Now this, I actually quite like this. It's some of the train reporting numbers that you can cut these out and add them into the front blinds on the locomotive to make it a little bit more accurate. And it gives you a choice here of 12 different ones. But what I like about this is what has caught my eye is that 7B03. No, so it's 7B03. The zero's distorted, just like on a prototype somewhere, the blind would have got snagged and wrinkled, creased up, and that just, makes it something a little bit more unique to your locomotive. And similarly, over here, the 7V75, you can see that the 7 is printed as if it's not quite centered, so it's rolled over a little bit towards the 8. And I just think that's a really nice touch. So they're there. I may choose to fit some of these, I may not. I haven't really decided, but certainly the locomotive comes with these. Now, we've got, I'm looking here, all of the separately applied details on this appear to have never been applied. So I'm pulling out, these are the buffer beam valances, which I showed you the exploded diagram on how to fit them. They come on the sprue. There's also at least two, both couplings there to fit to the NEM pocket. The fact that that's sealed means that this locomotive has probably never really been run. There's some more detailing parts there, but again, not entirely sure where they would go, but I'm sure that we'll figure that out in time. And my word, there is a whole wealth of different bits and pieces. They look like brake shoes, brake rigging. There's actually a lot of user fittable bits and pieces here. So it'll be interesting to see the locomotive and just see how it looks without any of this applied. But it is there if you want to add stuff to it. And gosh, we've even got an etched metal piece there with various pieces on. And again, I'm not entirely sure what that's for. But then turning this over, I can see all of the details for if you want to fit the correct buffer beam pipes on the valances. So things like vacuum pipes. I'm not sure. I think these may have had electric train heat. I'm not entirely certain about that. But certainly steam heat. I think they had steam heat boilers. But there's a lot of interesting stuff here. There's nothing else left in there. So I'm going to slide all these back in so they don't go missing. So let's get the main feature out here. And it's actually quite easy to get the Heljan model out. It's in this sort of slippy plastic bag. We just slide that out. I'll have to say that straight out of the box, a lot of the detail packs which are in there I recognise as being things like the bogie side details. And they're already applied to this loco. They're on both sides. Yes, they are. So it stands to reason that there's every possibility that there may actually be a spare set of detailing in there, which you don't need to apply. But one thing that I've spotted immediately on this, which has detracted it a little bit for me, is the brake shoes don't line up with the wheel treads. And in this day and age, that's really a bit of a cardinal sin there. You can see there, it's well in front of the wheel. And in all honesty, it's something that I think they could have done better. So first impressions on that, my eye has been drawn to that, and it's a bit of a bugbear, but let's see what the rest of the loco looks like. Well, certainly the front face wheel profiles, they're correct. The Class 52 is one actually, I'll have to dig it out off my computer, but I've got a photograph of a real Class 52, well, certainly the bogie detail, so it might be interesting to compare those two. In terms of the colour looks fine to me actually, and the sides and this sort of tumble home underneath, if you've got it upside down, which is not a normal viewing angle, there is a bit of a panel gap across there, but from normal viewing angles you really don't see it, so it looks like a 52 to me. We're looking as well here now at the grills, and they look pretty good to me. They're not a separately applied detailing piece by the look of it, but certainly what you see is pretty reasonable. The glazing is moderately flush, although these body side windows into the engine room area look a little bit, they're reminiscent to me of the early Bachmann Class 25s. They're clearly a push fit from inside, and there's just something about the way the plastic forms that just doesn't quite look like flush-fitted glass to me, but it's not a big problem. We've got metal handrails that come from the factory already in there, and yeah, they are metal, and they're already in there. That's absolutely fine. We've got the D1058 and the Western Nobleman on there, and I suddenly have a feeling, let me just go back to that detailing pack. These metal bits actually etched name things, but it's not actually clear what on earth these are for. Does it give me any kind of a clue in this? Now, this is a mystery that I feel an urge to solve. These etched metal bits are for some kind of a step that would protrude down, and actually it makes logical sense. Once it's pointed out here, the additional detail parts, it's actually obvious that they are missing, but if you've got fairly tight curves, it's not going to run very well without them, so that's probably why they're not factory fitted. It says here actually these are for the benefit of modelers who use it as a show model rather than a running model. So we've got extra brake blocks on the front of the wheels, and we've also got where all the detailing on the front goes, and actually the other etched parts go in there. They're front lamp handles, I think. So we don't get additional nameplates to go with this, but I feel that the standard of tampo printing is actually good enough that I'm quite happy with that. And we've got the BR double arrow there, and there's also a smattering of other detail points to it. We've got the tops panel there, overhead warning flashes. There's a plate of some description there. I can't actually read it. That might be a shed code plate. So that's the shed that this locomotive would have been allocated to. And then we've got down there, I presume that's a Builder's Works plate. And another one here, I suspect that may be a fuel gauge. It's also interesting to note that when we've looked really close up on these, you can tell that the finesse of tampo printing has moved on a lot since this model was new. So now on a newer model, you would expect all these plates to be perfectly legible, but on a model of this vintage, from normal viewing distances, they're absolutely fine, but in extreme close-up, it's impossible to really read if there's anything there at all, or whether it's just a suggestion of what would be on the real thing. We've also got all the little hinges nicely picked out in yellow and in this off-white cream colour for these, I think, the battery compartments. And it's actually really nicely done. And we've got this recessed detail there with it's a separately detailed injection molded piece on the inside, and it gives this great feeling of depth rather than just being a solid all-in-one molding. It really feels like a three-dimensional actual item, and I like that. That's pretty good. Now the front face of the locomotive, I suppose, is where make or break happens. Now I know that Dapol also released their model of the Class 52, and the pair of them don't quite look alike, and the area that they don't look alike is the above the windscreens, this top bit, the way it kind of curves and tumbles home down to the windscreens, and I can't really tell which is better and which is worse, and I suspect that they're both wrong, but in different ways. Now, if you can live with this fault, as I said to you at the beginning of this review, these locomotives can be picked up if you hunt around for a really good price. So you pays your money, you takes your choice. On the front here, we've got separately applied metal handrails. So we've got one across just under the windscreen, and then we've got one either side there and there. And then we've got, it looks like lighting apertures, but I don't know whether they light up yet. At the moment, the shed layout is out of commission, so you'll have to wait until I do a trains running video, because I've also got the Brighton Atlantic H1, the Bachmann model that we reviewed a little while ago. I have managed to get around to test running it. Works absolutely fine. This locomotive, I did get it test run at Worley on the MRC test track, so it does run absolutely perfectly. correctly. Any other detail points? Well, the roof actually is very, very fine. And bearing in mind, that's the bit of these locomotives you spend most of your time looking at, looking down on it. These roof grills with the fan relief underneath is very, very well done. Now, it's interesting to see. There's like a ghost outline of a fan. And now I don't know whether there is actually a real fan underneath there that may spin, or whether that's just somehow they've managed to capture that illusion. But sometimes if you blow through, you can cause the fan to spin. But no, there's no sign of movement, and I suspect that these are actually solid, but they're very, very well done. So, commendable effort on those by Heljan. And then we've got this etched grille across the top, and that all fits together really nicely. And then we've got the roof relief detail, again, very subtly done. It's not overpowering, it's not too chunky, but all the appropriate detail seems to be there. So, well, I must admit, I'm really pleased to get this locomotive. Class 52 has been on my hit list for an awfully long time. So, you know, I'm happy with it, and that's really what matters. In terms of other detail, the cab windscreens, we've got these very big front windscreens, and they've been done really, really well. They do feel, to me, they look like flush glazing. They capture the look and feel of the prototype pretty well, in my opinion. And you see this very spacious cab inside, and I'm looking in there, and there's certainly space. When you open this up, you can put your own figures in there, and I don't see any cab lighting in there, but certainly it's modelled with, I'm going to assume this is the number 1 end, although actually no, oh I see. The cab inserts are modelled with the window closed on one side, and if I turn that over, window open on the other side. It's an interesting idea, and it does mean that you could pose a crew member looking out the window for whatever reason. You know, maybe he's getting paid to watch the world go by. But on the other side, it's exactly the same. So window closed, windows open, and both cab interiors looking in there. There's an element of detail on the actual console desk. I can see a vague suggestion of dials or buttons, but it's not picked out in separate colours. Now, these locomotives have been out now for a few years, so, you know, when these came out, they were presumably, you know, details marched on as things have got better and better and better, and almost spurred on by each other. Each of the manufacturers has tried to outdo another as each subsequent loco comes out. But this was, you know, an earlier release from Heljan. I'm just looking here now. We've got crooked buffer there. It just caught on my jumper. I don't want to twist it too much, but they're all fully sprung, has to be said. And obviously the other end there, I'm just going to squeeze those there. So you've got fully sprung buffers, and the couplings themselves go into these custom NEM pockets. Now, Heljan have these rather weird NEM pockets. They're on the front of the bogies, and they do fit behind these front bits of valancing, so they're not too obvious, and if you were to fit the extra front valancing details, you wouldn't really see that. In terms of drive, well, I can see down there the phosphor bronze strips. We've got pickup from, it would appear to be, all-wheel pickup, and they're picking up off the centre of the wheels by the look of it. So it's presumably quite a reliable pickup system, and it's the same on both bogies. And what that means is that they're much less likely to get gunged up with muck being picked up off the track. In terms of drive, well, there's a centrally mounted 5-pole motor in these that uses flexible jack shafts that drive a gear tower down to these bogies. Both bogies are the same, and certainly the outer wheels on each of the bogies are powered, but the middle one is an idler. So it's a little bit reminiscent to the earlier Bachmann Class 37s, and I actually found no real problem with pulling power from them. So I've got every faith that actually this locomotive is going to have good pulling power. In terms of weight, there's a good weight to this, and it does come 8-pin DCC chip ready. So a bit like the Hornby models, it's already in there with a blanking plate ready to drop on in. So overall, I'd give this locomotive probably a solid 8.5 out of 10. It does have its flaws in terms of, most notably, the brake shoes not lining up with the wheels. But overall, this is a much better advancement on what we've had in the past from the likes of Lima. So it forms a welcome addition to my collection. Well, I hope it's been really informative to you. Don't forget to like this video and also share it too. And subscribe to the channel and you'll be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. But thanks again for watching. This is me, Jennifer Kirk, saying thanks for watching. And until next time, you take really good care of yourself. Bye for now. Today's video has been brought to you in part thanks to the generous donation of my fans on Patreon. And an extra special huge thanks go out to Anthony Kidson, Mark Anthony, Michael Churchwood, Mark McShane, Bob Threeton, Alec Ralph, and Anthony Hunt. If you'd like to help support the show, head on over to patreon.com/Jennifer Kirk. Thank you. Today's video has been brought to you by my books, Bringing Home the Stars, Twinkle Little Star, and also you can get the complete comic collections of All Over the House, Books 1, Books 2, and also the wacky zany Life of Knob T. Mouse. Thanks, and catch you later.